But so quick introductions. So we have here Susanna. So she's a master's student in information systems and likely will work with me only this semester. We'll see how things go, but probably just one semester. And so we also have Catherine and Karen, and there is another PhD student, Christy, who is also in the same PhD student cohort and also involved in this project. And so they've been working on this for a while now. And so we're trying to get the study out. And just to recap what the study is about, again, Susanna, I think I told you a little bit, but just in case. So the big issue or question or dilemma or, I don't know, concern perhaps in business research is that much of this research is conducted using students as study participants. So much of this, in fact, pretty much all of this research is done by professors, college professors. And so they need to run their experiments or collect their data somewhere. And obviously they have a relatively easy access to the students, can easily make some sort of a project part of their course requirements, maybe run some experiments in the class, maybe ask the students to complete the survey. And so that's a relatively easy path. And the alternative is very, very difficult, you know, finding a company and trying to survey the employees in that company. So almost never it's possible to run some tests or experiments in the company with people. At best, you may get some sort of replies in the form of a kind of self-report survey. And so because of that, every time the study involves people, almost always, I would say 90% of the publications, at least in, you know, on organizational behavior or people behaving in organizations, is based on students. I mean, obviously there is a lot of business research that uses companies as a unit of analysis. And so those studies primarily rely on archival data or some sort of, I don't know, databases of companies, entrepreneurship, trade, whatever the topic may be. But when it comes to people, when it comes to issues like I don't know, leadership, teamwork, interactions, conflict, absenteeism, you know, things like that. So in most of the cases, it would be related to, you know, collecting original data. And in many cases, it would be based on students rather than people. And so the concern is that if we use students, whatever we find in that study, would it be generalizable to the general population? So let's say we do find that A affects performance, whatever that A might be. I don't know, cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, IQ, I don't know, diligence, personality, I don't know, gender, age. So the question becomes, if we find that there is an effect in a student sample, can we also claim that the same effect exists in a sample of employees at organizations? And so this paper here, study, is aimed at specifically testing whether or not there is a difference. If there is a difference, is it always there, or is it sometimes maybe dependent on the topic? So maybe when we try to measure some sort of, or study some sort of attitudes, or maybe if we want to study some sort of preferences, maybe it doesn't matter who the respondents are. But maybe if we look at the effects of, I don't know, compensation structure, motivation, maybe here it's a whole different story when you have sort of working employees that do it as part of the job, as opposed to students who do it just for fun or for credit. And so we want to test it in two different ways. So there have been a lot of papers that discuss the issue, but they talk about it conceptually. So we've had many papers that talk about this in general terms, like, you know, you should or should not use students because maybe students are too young. And as people get older, they change their attitudes. Or maybe students are not motivated the same way. So they just do it for little credit in the course, as opposed to the risk of losing the job if you don't do it well. So all those are known concerns. Yeah, all of those are known concerns. And but nobody really tested, well, nobody did a comprehensive test of it. And so we want to do it in two different ways. So one, we found, and I don't remember the exact number, but it seems like we'll have at least a couple dozen so-called meta-analyses. So these are paper studies that looked at all kinds of things that, you know, A affects B, whatever those A and B might be. But many of them included specifically, so they basically did analysis of published studies. And many of them included a variable, basically student. So they literally, like, for example, a meta-analysis wants to know if there is a relationship between, let's say, for example, personality and performance. And so that meta-analysis found 100 published studies that looked at the personality traits and performance. And let's say they found that 20, 30, 40%, maybe, I don't know, half of those studies were based on student samples. And so they include specifically one variable, that is it a student sample or not? And then they would look and discuss, and they say, you know what, every time we saw a student sample, the results were different than when it was a sample of employees. And so we already found those studies. And so our PhD students here went through that list. And my understanding is that they already selected the ones that contain that student or lab study variable. So is that correct, or do we still have some of them to check?
So one quick comment here. I think we did go through all of the articles and code them yay or nay, but I know like in the batch that I did, I had like 4 or 5 that I was uncertain about, and I coded them as such. And we were going to, I think Christy Heron and I were going to we were going to look at those that we had questions about together and see if we could come to a consensus to resolve the uncertainty. So that's the piece that I think we haven't done yet. I think they've all been coded initially, but if there was any that we were uncertain about, we have not, as the 3 of us, the tripod here, we haven't resolved inconsistencies. Right, Karen?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So just to refresh, Voss and Susanna, welcome. And this is how we were coding them. We have folders, and we were coding each of the papers with a minus if it had student data, a plus if it included student data. It could have other data, but included student data. And then there was a code SE, which meant excluded students on purpose. And they made a statement somewhere in that paper that said,
we want that as well. Yeah, so that's
so we have an SE on those. But then I know I have several also, Catherine, that have a plus and a minus, or a minus and a plus. It's because I need to talk to another human being about what this really means.
And maybe even the best one, the best approach here would be if you can show me where they are. Maybe I'll go through them next and then sort of make those determinations if needed. So do we have many of those plus minus?
It's been a while, Voss, since I thought about it, but really, yeah, it's like not many.
Well, let's even say it's 10, 20.
I don't think double digits, okay.
Yeah, but even if it's 10, 20, so it's probably going to be best if I look at them anyway, and it shouldn't be too long. So that's fine. So, but then, so do we still have some meta-analytic papers that we need to check, or they all have been checked other than some are not clear?
Mine are done. I'm not sure. Catherine, do you know?
I mean, I think I finished my batch. Karen, you finished your batch. I think Christy finished her batch, but I haven't asked her.
Okay. Well, then most likely it's either done or nearly done. And then, so that's clear. So, and then I'll take a look at those plus minus. And then we had, so it will be study 1, sort of meta-analysis of meta-analysis. Then study 2, we also went to 8, I believe, main international business journals and looked for every paper that mentioned the word student in it. And then, so that gave us quite a lengthy list of papers, but now we went through those papers to see if they simply mentioned students or they possibly actually used student samples. And so the idea was that if we can find some papers that were based on student samples, we can then, once we know what the topics are, we can then see if, let's say, for example, going back to personality and performance, if we can find, let's say, I don't know, 5 or 10 student papers based on student samples on this topic, then we can literally run some sort of a meta-analysis based on this sample, and then go and see in the literature if we can find more of those papers now with the employee samples. And so basically do our own mini meta-analysis on each of those topics. And again, if I understand correctly, and so that's more of a question. So where do we stand with that? Because we had quite a few of those papers. So we haven't been able, or you guys haven't been able to go through all of them yet, I assume, right? Because if you have that, that would be sort of far beyond expectations, because it was a lot of papers. So I suspect there are still some left that need to be checked, right? Or where do we stand with that? Do you remember?
That doesn't sound familiar to me at all, Voss. We just have this one folder that we've been living in.
Maybe we didn't do that at all yet.
You know what I'm wondering? What it sounds like is we actually did the part 2 with all the papers, because we divided them up into 3. Maybe we missed the part 1. Karen?
You mean like a review of meta-analyses?
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine. So either way is fine. So yeah. Do we want to, so Karen, maybe if you want to share your screen, I think you are most familiar with the navigation of the folders. And maybe let's take a look together. So if you want to go to that folder.
Okay. Yep. So hopefully you can see my screen now. And it's the folder that we've been working in. It's called Other Meta-Analyses. And so you put a number next to the ones that have, and so let's look at Journal of Business Ethics. So we have 2 that have, right, and the others with negatives. I'll go back a step. Oops, sorry.
So, but yeah, from my folder, I see that it looks like both parts at least have been worked on, if not done. Maybe, Karen, can I share that for a second? Just, on my screen for a second. So let's see if you, this is the folder because it's been some time since we worked with that, right? So we have here 2 folders. One is Other Meta-Analyses.
We don't see your screen anymore.
Professor can't see your screen yet.
It's not showing the screen? Oh, I selected the screen but didn't click share. Okay. So, but it's showing it now, right? Yeah. So we have here Other Meta-Analyses and we have papers to code. And so when we go to Other Meta-Analyses, so we have everything we could find. So like if we go, for example, Journal of Management. So this one had a lot of them. And so I see we have only a minus here. So somebody looked at it, but only one was processed. But human relations, if I remember correctly, human resource management. So somebody seems to have processed it all together. So I see a bunch of pluses. I see 1 plus minus, and I'm not sure what double minus means. Is it like—
I think that's a good question. That's likely mine.
But, so if I open just one of them, for example, one with the plus, let's take a quick look here, because it seems like somebody worked with them, and I'm pretty sure that we started. So let me go like this: a student. So it seems like student comes up only as like this, but if we go lab, oh, then it comes up in available in all of these. Yeah, so field versus lab. And so it was basically students versus employees. So case of laboratory. So yeah, so somebody, and that's exactly what we need. And so, and then it seems like somebody thoughtfully highlighted what we need here. So yes, settings, and they have basically the results right here. Yeah, so this is the column that we need. So in this particular case, it looks to me that they had 8 studies based on employees, 9 studies on employees, 8 studies based on students, with a total of about 1,000 each. And the effect size, in this case, it was D, whatever they were testing. It seems like it's virtually identical. So 0.28, 0.29. So no difference, students, non-students, it seems to me. And then I think this is the standardized difference. There is some difference here. So, and I'm not sure what's that. Oh, that's the standard deviation. No. So yeah, so it was a little bit less consistent with the students, but it was essentially the same effect. And so, but it does look like we have a bunch of studies that are not processed, and I'm not sure if it just, like, for example, Journal of Management, it seems like still empty. And then if we go to organizational behavior, still not processed. So we have 22. So it seems like we are done with some, but not with others, right? And then, for example, personnel psychology, it seems like it's all fully done, other than plus minus. So I suppose these are the unclear ones, right? Am I reading that correctly, or?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe somehow these folders got left out of the folder we were working from.
Because yeah, I see that pretty much all of them, well, it depends. It almost seems like it depends. Like this is not good apparently. Oh, so there is nothing here for some reason, I'm not sure. Human performance process. So it seems like there are a few studies, yeah, like that's back to Journal of Management. But I'm not sure marketing research. So I'm not sure if some were just missed or not recorded, or, but it looks like there is still something left, but definitely much done, right?
Look at my emails. I've been in a rush today, so I apologize. I thought I'd spend some time before our meeting and refreshing myself because it's been since May since we've worked on this. And I can't remember exactly what my journal list was. So I can go back in my email and just take a quick look. Or Catherine, do you know what journals you had? And then we could open up one of those folders and check it out.
Yeah, sure. Hold on. If you give me just a second, I can figure it out.
Yeah, and maybe it was, maybe one of you or two of you completed the work and maybe one didn't, and maybe that's where the difference comes from.
Because I think it's important, yeah, just to figure out where we are.
Well, and we can, I mean, honestly, I mean, if there's stuff that still needs to be coded, I mean, I can work on it this weekend.
And so yes, it's not like it must be done right away. So it's more of a, I want to get an assessment of what still needs to be done. And then we will just move at a normal pace. We'll just then decide who does what. So what can be done by Susanna, what still needs to be finished by you three. But yes, from what I see, it seems like pretty much all of them have been processed if there is a, if there is a meta-analysis. But there are a few, very few that are left without the notation. So maybe it was Christy's papers and she didn't finish, because the vast majority from what I see are pretty much done. So applied psychology is done. So this was a big one. So even if something's left, it looks like it's not going to be much.
Could you please, clarify one thing? What is the difference between the plus, minus, and the SC? Once again, I know
don't worry about that, Susanna, now. So let's first see what needs to be done. Then we will decide who does what. And if this will happen to be your task, then we will provide the, and it may be that maybe it's, more efficient that the same PhD student finish this task because it looks like it's not much and they've been working on it for a while. So they sort of know what to pay attention to. But yeah, from what I see here, it seems like the vast majority have been processed, but there are some that haven't not been. And so I'm not sure if it's just a matter of notation, maybe somehow it was not just marked, or maybe there are still a few to go through. So it looks like
the other thing I know is that I do think that Christy had some problems with her Dropbox.
Yeah, maybe she just didn't upload them with the changed names or something.
So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking maybe her papers, she's worked on them, but they didn't save. She's got a different system somewhere else that maybe didn't save to Dropbox.
Very possible, very possible. Some of these, like for example, here, it seems like a couple of papers have been processed and others haven't. So I'm not sure if it's an issue of access to Dropbox, but let's sort of table it for a second. I'll send the question to Christy, and then you can then also take a look who was doing what, and so if it's just simply a matter of uploading the new files, or if it's something that we just didn't get to some of them yet. So, but that shouldn't be such a big task as far as the selection of the papers. Then let's take a quick look at the papers here. So remind me if you worked on this. So these are the nine journals that we had. And so I'm not sure if we've gone through the original papers, or did we go only through we didn't look at these at all, right?
I have.
So this doesn't look familiar, right?
Not to me, no.
Yeah, okay. So then, yes, then maybe that would need to be the next sort of big step. And so we have quite a few of them. If I need to, I think there is an easy way to look for the total number. What I'll do is I'll just look for every paper that contains letter A. And so that's like thousands. But they just mentioned student, so just student sample and nothing else. And so the best way to process them would be to not even get into the paper. We just look at the titles. So the titles in most of the cases will give us all we need. So attention and trust. So American executives negotiating with Chinese executives. So clearly not a student. Maybe we don't even need to, or I guess we want to mark them if we want to. So like this. So it shouldn't be more than a minute per paper to see. So cross-national differences in computer use ethics, 9-country study. Okay, 9-country study sounds suspicious that it may be students. Computer use, I'm not sure somebody was working with that, but we just go to sample and see what the sample was. Instruments, findings. So this looks like it's some sort of, it's not even people. It doesn't look like it's a sample. Methodology. A survey, vignettes, or we can go a different way and just open and look for the word student, in which context it was used. Students, there's this discussion. The instruments were then administered to students in each of, so this one is a student-based one, right? So we know for sure that this one contains students. So we put a plus. So I don't know how much time it takes here. So, but the effect of cultural adaptation in business related American settings, Americans selling to Japanese and Thais. It doesn't sound like it could be students, but let's take a look. Participants in this study were executives, whereas those in in Francis, what's Francis? So Francis did the study and used students, whoever that Francis is, but we used executives. So then there would be no students in this study. So it was student Newman's multiple. So that's just the name of the test, but there is no. So this is non-students. So it seems like they can be processed at a speed of about, let's say, 1 minute per paper. So let's do a couple more. Skill utilization in overseas interns. Overseas interns doesn't sound like it's a student paper. Provide employees with bright students to, or maybe it was a student stuff. So it doesn't look like it's an empirical paper. It looks like it's some sort of a discussion, but.
Sometimes papers like that, Boss, that don't really have clear findings, empirical studies, do you just want a negative next to that one too?
Probably so. Like if we don't have any numbers, we won't be able to do anything with it. But yeah, but it does look like this is the students whose home country was Asia. So it seems like this was a student sample. It looks like people, the participants were students, and so then we just put a plus here. But yes, if in doubt, I guess exclude. So because we will need those numbers in a clean, nice format. So if we are not sure, then we just skip it. So even though it looks like it's a lot of, so if we have, let's say, 3,500 papers, some of them will take more time, but some will be clearly visible that they're not usable. So if we go by minutes, it looks like it will be about 60 hours total. So shouldn't be too much if there are 4 people. So it shouldn't be more than, let's say, I don't know, 15, 20 hours per person. And so again, Susanna here, for her, that's part of the assignment. So maybe she can take on a little bit more time because for you, that's just voluntary work. So, but in any case, I'm trying to see like cosmopolitan consumers. Again, consumers, probably not students, but it could be an experiment with the student studies. So the way I would do it is I would just go students. Yeah, so based on a sample of Canadian students, so definitely students. So right there, so we are finding quite a few. So we don't need to do anything with it for now. We just mark it as students. And that will give us 2 bits of information for the study. One, we will want to talk about, oops, sorry, it was a plus. One, we will talk about students. We will talk about how frequently papers used students to begin with. And so here, yeah, consumer, let's get it more correctly, plus. And skill utilization, that was also plus. And this one was a minus, right? Yes. So one, we will report how much each of these journals used student samples. So we'll say this many percent, maybe we'll do it even by year. So we'll say, up until 2000, it was so many, but then over time, the use of students has declined or increased. But second, we will then look at the topics and we will try to see what topics have been covered. If we can find at least maybe 5, 6 topics where we have multiple papers looking at the same issue. And in that case, we can work with that. We can do a meta-analysis. And so that would be the second stage. So as long as we can get these pluses or minuses, we will then go the final stage for you. And from there, I'll take it over and we'll do the rest myself. So we would need to finish the meta-analysis, then we would need to decide or figure out which of these papers, original papers, contain student samples, and then the final batch for those that do contain student samples, which ones were based, basically what were the topics that they covered. So what was the actual issue they studied. And I bet if we go into JIBS, like for example, the more recent publications, there will be hardly any student samples there. Like for example, private equity returns. I mean, clearly that's not even people, that's company. So I'm not sure why they mentioned students. Then we go to this one, explaining diversity and the worldwide diffusion of good governance. So we might want to take a look at it, but it seems like it's something that is more about companies. Yeah, sample of 67 countries, individuals, so that's not people. So they study countries here. So most of these will be very easy to, like, we don't even need to look at anything other than the original. So collectivism. So this seems to be observations 32. So these are country level studies. So it's not, could not be students, it's countries. So so it will go pretty fast once we are, yeah. The effects of culture, so that's a meta-analysis. By the way, that's probably this one you probably had in your meta-analysis collection. So that's the Decade's Best Paper Award. So by the way, this man here is our co-author on this paper. Günther Stahl, he's the editor of JIBS. And so he's sort of working with us on this study. So we'll do the review with him. Pay for performance in emerging markets, insight from China. So most likely, since it's pay, I don't think it's possible that it's students. So we might want to look at these ones. So I'm trying to see here and you know, like basically show you that it may not be as time consuming. So I'm not sure what this student here means, researchers and students, but that's, you know, it doesn't even mention. So
yeah, it's just in their journal description.
Yeah, and that worries me because it seems like all of them have this footnote. So it almost looks like we selected all of the papers. Like, is that possible? Psychological resources and stressors. So this could be potentially data.
For me, I think I'd always open up the paper, Voss, and just search for student.
Yeah, that's probably best way to do it. But some of them, based on the title, you will see right away that there is no way it could be based on students. Like here, the only place where student meant. But some of them, like you would see, it's definitely at level. The effect of international production shifts and willingness to purchase hybrid products. So like it's, yeah, definitely, you know, not usable. Global account management strategies. So again, global account, that's definitely like, so these all three not students. And so some of them probably will take like 15 seconds just to look at. And we see right away that there is no way it could be based on students. So then the amount of work is more or less clear. How do we want to then go, like what's the best way to coordinate? Should we maybe ask Susanna to start working on these papers like the last test that I showed? And then you meanwhile take a look at those remaining meta-analyses. And then once you know what's done, we can go from there. Would that be the best way maybe?
So Kieran, I put in the chat, I think what you were asking for earlier, which was how we divvied up the journal folders.
Okay, so yep. Thank you for finding that.
No problem. It was buried in some emails from like May. But that's how we had them divvied up. And so I'm however we want to divvy up this next batch is fine with me. You tell me, and Susanna, you tell me what works best for you guys. I'd like to spend a little time working on it this weekend, if possible, because my weeks, I do not like working from work anymore. I don't get anything done, but anyway, I'd like to go ahead and get started on it this weekend if possible, just because my time during the week is not good.
Professor, would you want me to, start doing this? I can go ahead.
Yes, Susanna can allocate 18 hours a week. So that's her sort of assignment. And so maybe let's do the following, just, to begin. And then once we are done, we may even ask Susanna to do some coordination here, kind of do the counts. but let's do the following. So Karen and Catherine, if you can check maybe with Christy and see what's done on the meta-analytic front, meta-analytic papers, if anything needs to be done there, and then, see if it can be finished. But then here, I guess all we'll do is, in fact, I can probably do that right away. So if you give me a second here, so there's only 8. So we have 1186 here. So we can just literally divide it 4 ways. 1186, maybe I'll do it like this. So it's a different number of papers per journal, obviously. So it shouldn't take us more than a few minutes. Just a second. So
let's do that now. That's perfect.
550. So, and then we will know the total number, and we can maybe do them 103. Oops. $451 or $450, I guess. $64. So this one will have a lot. 10. $67. $57. And that's something we added last minute. 255. That's new stuff. Yeah, I think while we were searching, more papers became, while we were working on that, more papers became available. We might want to do one more update at some point, but we'll do that later if we have time. So, but in terms of the number of papers here, we have, a total of 1186 plus 550 plus 103 plus 450 plus 64 plus 510 plus 67 plus 257 plus 110 plus 225. So basically we have about 3,500. Do we want to split it 4 ways for now, and then once Susanna is done with her work, if you are still not done, we will then redistribute it one more time?
Yeah.
Maybe let's do it this way. So if we have roughly 3,500, so that gives us about 880 papers per student. The only thing is that it may require some extra work with those meta-analytic papers. So maybe don't, Karen, Catherine, and Christy, if you're watching, don't start working on this task until you're done with the meta-analyses. And then, as I said, move at the pace that you can move. So probably Susanna will move a little faster just because she can allocate more time, or is required to allocate more time. So we will then redistribute later on once we're done. But so if we want to go with about 800 papers, so can we then maybe, I'll put Susanna here. And then, so it looks like this would be, approximately, I'm not sure. So it gives us, so if like, for example, if I go Karen, and then it seems like with this one, it should be about, not quite, but close to Karen. And then if we do, and I think with this, that should, that gives us approximately, and then Something like that. And maybe this.
Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen? Oh,
no, I don't see it.
Sorry, I've been doing all this. Okay, so my apologies. So I did, I did the math, and so I put the names. So Karen gives you about 600. Catherine gives you also a little bit 600 plus or minus. Maybe I'll also put this for Karen. So, and I think that would be a little bit more or less equal. And Christy gets 335. Yeah, so about closer to 900, something like that. So close enough to begin now, and then we can redistribute as we move along. So then, yes, I guess that would be the task. And please see if Meta-Analysis needs meta-analytic papers if they need any selection. But once done, this would be the next task. And I'll go one more time just for Susanna to show what needs to be done. In fact, let me go to some other folder, and then I'll go back to that one just to check a couple of things, by the way.
And just to ask, that folder is called Papers to Code.
Yeah, that's the paper. Yeah, one thing, and it may need, I see I have here, so 2018-20, Journal of World Business. Let me see, because I think it may be the repetition. Journal of World Business. Oh, so that one was moved, but not the other ones. Okay. So there are a few papers, but yeah, that shouldn't change the math too much. So in fact, I think we can keep it as is. But so this is what needs to be done. So we basically, in a fast view, we might want to go paper by paper looking at the titles. But sometimes by the title, we cannot say right away. So we open the paper. And so we are looking for studies that used students as study participants. And so as long as you put the word student, that should student. Doesn't even come up.
We also tried lab and class.
Ah, yes. Lab.
I have all the time in the world for that, with this big stuff.
Laboratory, maybe like that. Class. That's not.
That makes sense because it's a strategy paper, so.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how it even made it into the folder. So, but yes, this one definitely a no. Let's do a couple more. Oh, I opened it. So let's see. National culture and adoption of new technologies. This may contain student samples. They could have done some sort of a, wait a second, let me do one thing here. So we have a total of 550 papers. So if I look for the word student, how many come up?
Oh.
Is it still looking or? Huh. This is interesting. Is it possible that some papers made it here that do not contain the word student? Or is it possible? No, it is. The text is recognized. Only students. So university students have a personal homepage. So this one, we don't know right away. So let's take a look at the sample characteristics. IT industry doesn't look very promising. Research, so let's see what's here. Yeah, it doesn't look like it contains any sample per se, so it's a no again. But let me see a couple more from this batch. So is it possible that somebody selected papers that don't even contain the students? Because I had also some helpers. How could this be? And so if that's the case, I'm thinking that maybe we should delete those papers altogether or maybe mark them in some other way. Because one thing we will be saying in the paper, we will say, well, we found so many papers that used the word student in it. And in this case, that's not even the case. So I'm curious how this could have happened. And at the same time, I'm curious because Journal of World Business, there is no way they published only 5 papers with students in them. There must be many more. In fact, they published like 4 of them just by me, like this journal. Students, seasonal workers, maybe students, so there's still the discussion. Yeah, so this one doesn't contain any student papers, but it does mention the word student. Maybe it was just not indexed, and maybe that's why it comes up. Yeah, this one's not even empirical. No, it is empirical. But data, migrants, so it's, yes, not students for sure. Okay.
Professor, I just have one doubt.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at the paper, I do understand that sometimes there is no word called student, and I get a clear idea that it's not something that is dealt with student or something. But even if I find something, just like how you have checked now, even if I find a word student like that, what else that I should look for that will give me a confirmation that it is something that we are looking for?
I'd say if we don't see student, let's drop it. I mean, yes, potentially it could be lab versus field, but I cannot imagine how they can talk about lab without mentioning the word student.
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely. So in this case, we see the model and they talk about expatriates, repatriates, recipients. So it's definitely employees. So it's not a student. The only thing that I worry about is that where did the student come from? Like, how did it even make it here?
Okay. So I might have to go through a few, sentences just to understand what is the context.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I don't know, Catherine and Karen. So do you think we should be looking for any other word other than student? I mean, is it possible that there was a student sample, but the word student was not used?
There were a couple of times that I thought I saw that because they talked about lab, but it's rare. It's very rare. And you could see it in the data when you look at the descriptive.
Well, so ultimately the task is to see if students were the sample.
Okay.
But I guess over time, if you find some other
participants, right? They're lab participants, but then when you start reading it, you're like, okay, these are students.
Yeah.
But I think it's very rare.
Yeah, I think it's, and so now that the search, it seems like it was not indexed because as you can see, the number of papers with the word student is increasing. So maybe they were simply not indexed. That makes sense. So it seems like it will come out. So I'm not sure why this number is increasing as I'm searching for students. But this is a little strange, and the files have been sitting here for a long time. So I'm not sure why it's coming up only now, but it looks like quite a few of them will contain the word. But there is one more thing that so I guess, Susanna, the task is clear, right? So we just basically put plus if it contains a student. The only other thing that I would like to ask you, so I'm not sure, it doesn't look like it will be the case with the Journal of World Business, but with the Journal of International Business Studies. So my concern is that, as you can see, all of these publications contain this passage. And so all of them contain the word student here. And so, Susanna, I guess that's for you since you will be working with that one. Can I ask you to open each one of them and see if it actually contains the word student? Because like this one evidently doesn't. So it's about import experts. And so if that's the case, please simply delete the file, like literally delete it. Now, one important thing that I didn't ask you, do you use Dropbox on a regular basis? You know what it is?
Me? No, I don't. I never use Dropbox.
So can I ask you then, and I'll explain that in a second, so there is no need to keep Karen and Catherine here. But yeah, it's an app. It's Dropbox, Box, what are the other? Google Docs. It's essentially all of them are the same. So if you know what it is, so I'll just share the folder with you. You can access them in the browser just like Karen did. So basically it would be something like this. So if you go to them in the browser, it looks like this, and you can probably work with them in the browser. It's not a problem. So you can also click here and delete the file. You can click here, yeah, so where it was delete, you can click and open it here. So if you click, it opens and it works exactly the same way. So, and
it is more efficient. Yeah, with the way that you're going to recommend though. So in browser, I just showed it for quick.
Yes, but it's definitely worthwhile to install Dropbox as a folder, and it just appears as a regular folder in your computer, so it's not a problem.
Yes, Professor.
And then you basically work with them as if they are on your Dropbox. I think they will actually download to your hard drive, so you might want to have some space, but it shouldn't be too, like GIPs, for example, if you wanted to download this folder only. So I don't think it will be 2 gigabytes. I mean, it's sizable, but it's not gigantic. So and then the whole folder that we are working with, if you wanted to share the whole thing. So let's see, how big is it? So it's 3 gigabyte total. So hopefully that's something you can move on your folder for a while, I mean hard drive for a while, and then you can delete them, unlink it once you're done. So, but yeah, I'll show you in a minute how to use it. But Karen and Catherine, so any other things? So is it more or less clear now then? So what needs to be done? I'll stay maybe for another minute with Susanna just to explain to her how Dropbox works, but that's basically the task. And so, yes, but yes, what I wanted to say here is that for Dropbox, I mean, for GIBs, definitely, but I'm not sure if it will be the case with any others. So since we need to know how many actually used the word student, so because everybody, like it almost looks like we got every single paper here, because from what I see, the pages go consecutively, right? So 51, 74, 75. So it looks like we literally downloaded every single paper ever published in GIBs. And it looks like the vast majority of them are not even suitable because I see the pages like issues. So it looks like we got every single paper here. And yes, so logic of privatization, and in no way this one contains students. So we definitely just delete them, delete. So there will be probably fewer left when we are done, or this one. So I'm just trying to open Guanxi versus the market. So again, ethics versus efficiency. So it doesn't look like it's a study about people. It's a study about companies, most certainly. Well, they actually do mention something like one-time student. So Guanxi, but it's in some discussion. So somebody, yeah, so these guys did a study using students, but yeah, clearly it's not something that was done in this study. So yes, so if that's the case, so this one did mention students legitimately in paper, but if the only place where you see student is in this preamble, yeah, and nowhere else, let's just delete it. So we know that it's not even supposed to be here. Okay. So, okay.
Yes, Professor,
yeah. Sure. All right, so then yes, Karen, Catherine, so I guess clear with you, and I'll send a summary by email just in case. And Susanna, so then if you have one more minute, I'll just show you how to
Professor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, but with Dropbox, all you do is, so yes, Catherine, Karen, if you want to stay for a second, but otherwise we are done. But yes, for Dropbox, all you'll do is you'll just go to dropbox.com. It will look a little different because I'm logged in, but when you're at Dropbox, somewhere there, it will be download Dropbox. And it's a relatively small piece of software. You download it and it appears on your computer like this folder, but you can—
Professor, I can't see your screen.
Oh, yes, yes, sorry. Yes. I unlinked it. So yeah, you just install the software on your computer. It will, so you go to dropbox.com, download the software. Once you download it, it will add as a folder here and here. And you can put in it, like in my case, all my files, every single file is in Dropbox. So, and so the beauty, by the way, you might want to use it for the future. The beauty of it is that not only you can access your files from any computer, and I have multiple computers, it automatically synchronizes all my files. So if I work at the office, I open any file and it automatically synchronizes it to my home computer. So I don't really need to do anything, like, and literally all my files are in Dropbox. But another benefit is it keeps the files, all versions of the file in memory for, I believe, like 180 days. So if you accidentally delete something or change something, like for example, some of the files that I work with, just to give you an example. So if I, for example, go to view in Dropbox, like version history, it literally will contain all the hundreds of versions of history. And if I want to restore any version from like August 29, I just click and restore. So often I make some inadvertent change or delete the file. It keeps it in the memory online for a long time, not on my hard drive. But ultimately, yes, it will be Dropbox here. Once you create a Dropbox and you tell me what email you use, I will share the folder with you. And so this way it will be just a folder, like any folder on your computer, and any change you make there, we all four of us will see it right away. So you add the plus, we will see it. You add the minus, it does it automatically, including on my computer. And so as you can see, I have a lot of them shared here. So like this is a study I work with, I don't know, like 5 professors or whatever the numbers, so I can check here. So yeah, these are the people who have access. So basically it's the same folder. So we'll do the same thing here as well. So this one probably has like 2 people because I think I have only 1 quarter on this study. So it's only the 2 of us. But yes, every time I edit the file, he instantly sees the change. Well, like once he opens his computer, it automatically updates it. So this way we don't have to send email attachments. We don't have to deal with, it just simply shared folder. So yes, if you can install the Dropbox, send me an email, let me know that you've done it. I'll share the folder with you, and then you can proceed with that GIF stuff, looking for the student samples.
Sure, Professor. I will, sign up using my UNCG email address.
It doesn't matter, whichever one you prefer, so as long as you know which one it is.
Okay, sure, Professor. I'll do it right away, and I'll send you.
Yep, that sounds very good. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Professor. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you. I'm the one receiving the help, so thank you. So, yes.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, Professor.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.